Started a bit early because I got some things to say tonight. I'm very energetic. I've been pacing around, ready to start. And, I'm going to welcome you to the Condor DM show, Out of Order. Tonight is about Kara-Tur and the Oriental adventures. You can't talk about one without the other. The Oriental adventures is the backbone, the thing that inspires the creation of Kara-Tur. So they're connected. All cover the entire background of the Oriental adventures, right up through Kara-Tur, even to the advancement to the second edition AD&D from AD&D 1 where it starts. I want to be honest about these streams this year in 2026 when I do them about this stuff. And I keep telling you I'm being factual. And I want to warn people. This is not about, there's no aggression in these streams. I hope you're noticing. But I'm going to be brutal with the truth. Even against myself. I have many opinions, and if you listen to the streams, you can hear me just mentioning stuff that Gary and TSR pushed that I simply don't agree with. But guess what? I put my own feelings aside, kicked my feelings, right? I kicked dirt on them and just said, I'm not going to care about what I think. But within it, it means I'm not going to worry about your feelings either. I got to tell some people out there, it's okay to like something that might not be supported the way you thought it was. It's just okay, right? I try not to say, I want to be clear. I'm not attacking people with any of this content. Even the miniature stuff I did it TSR-era, and then the growth, I did another part of it on another stream, which was a continuation into third edition and the growth of the miniature part of our tabletop role-playing game hobby. Because in reality, it's something that it tells you can pretty much use straight out of the box with AD&D. And make sure that when you go into the book that you realize it's clearly optional. And there is going to be a reason because first off, you're only going to get so many crossovers from the wargaming era or from the wargaming zone. And some people they're bringing in aren't even wargamers. And it's just they don't always have the miniatures. You want to know what most people use? Little chips. If not, they use like something simple. White piece of paper, pencil, pen. Things that were affordable to have compared to the cost of the miniatures. And the miniatures prices went up and up and up as this progressed. The more people want them for other reasons, because there's a side hobby that starts developing, painting, doing this. And so there is a market for it. So the prices of miniatures keep skyrocketing. Again, creating a barrier into the hobby. When I came into the hobby, most people used paper. Simple paper, marked down where the enemy was, where you were, if they weren't just doing pure theater of the mind. Most people that would bring miniatures would bring them to represent their characters. Some of them, the odd tables, would use them for minor combat details. But in some cases, they'd still just go to pure theater of the mind combat if there's just not enough pieces to cover everything, right? And you want to know what? There is something about pure theater of the mind combat. It's pretty quick. And when you get good at it and you start feeling like you don't need the other thing, the less work you got to do to actually perform the combat and enjoy it because you're okay with this, you will find yourself becoming lazy. This is what I encounter because so many people use pure theater of the mind. And they become lazy about the idea of even using paper or miniatures after a while. Because back in the day, more people did it, so more people realized you could just do it. And when you don't have an option but to do this, that's when you really find out you can do something, right? When you can't afford the things or have the items. There's nothing wrong. It became popular even in old school. When I got online, I was doing in-person gaming and doing online on a program called Open RPG, quite a bit of this. And I got here about 2 years before third edition pops up onto the scene. The second edition and even AD&D guys 90% were pure theater. Some of the guys used a little program above that was pretty crappy for some representation of images to use as miniatures, right, on a thing. But it was so time-consuming that even they gave it up after a while. And we were all on theater. The more push was when third edition came out, not even right away. It was after a while, WotC had did something unique, insane. They made the miniatures affordable by turning it all into pretty much plastic. And they did it for a reason, because they took their own version of D&D and moved it heavily towards miniature use, but with a game plan to turn them into plastic, make them affordable, so they're not a barrier getting into the hobby, right? And old school guys took advantage of this break in the market. And so more guys right away took advantage of being able to get miniatures and start playing with them, even in the old school. And that's really where a lot of old school guys pick up heavy miniature gameplay and start forward. That doesn't actually happen for real in the TSR era. It's TSR is even out of business, and we're still on slow progress of finding companies that are going to cut the price down. WotC changed the game, and we should at least acknowledge that reality. They really did. They cut the prices down. Suddenly, old school and new school could get affordable miniatures for common use, right? And everybody in the hobby that did D&D took advantage. The miniatures were just as good for the old school games. It's just a goblin. So if it's good for third edition, it's good for AD&D 1E too, right? Just a miniature. Nothing wrong with it. And in a weird way, a lot of the miniature guys in the old school, I think one thing they don't appreciate about WotC, but they do acknowledge some of this with fourth edition, WotC has been more supportive of their miniature gameplay mindset in a lot of ways. I find at least they're supportive of it, regardless of what direction you think they've gone in. But they'd be more supportive of that overall gameplay and making it something the game more leans into than TSR ever did. I think that has to be acknowledged. Okay. So we started early just to get some of this out of the way, because I don't want people to come here feeling attacked. Tonight we're going to cover an amazing thing, because I think so few people know the details about this stuff. It has to do with Zeb Cook, his influence even into AD&D 1, 2nd edition, and the Oriental Adventures and Kara-Tur and all this stuff we're going to cover tonight, right? I just, I talked about it recently, and I said I would talk about it in the stream tonight, so I'll mention it for a minute. I don't mind the idea that people have this concept of using a raw mindset, I guess, when they talk about the games, about D&D. I always think if you're just honest, you get to the right place anyway. I think there's a messiness that should be allowed somewhat in conversations, but I also think most of the end results of what we're talking about have simple answers. And when I was younger, I learned that to finally understand something is to be able to explain it in simple terms, so a younger person would understand what you're saying about a very complicated thing that seems complicated, but you have learned so much about it that you, instead of all the talk around what this could be up and down, maybe between, you have a wise sort of final understanding of what it all is going to lead to. Like, you can find answers where every road leads to Rome, right? You're always going to get to the same place when you get there. It's always going to be the same simple answer over the thing. I say to people that like miniatures, history shouldn't matter, even if it doesn't lean in your direction. Hey, you want to do it right? You can do it right, and you're doing it right. Well, that's all that matters. So that's where I'm at. I'm trying to get more, I think more clarity and more facts that we have leads to the understanding. I mean, it just sort of, breaks some debates, it breaks some tension to bring facts up. Man, we get to look at this stuff. Tonight's not going to be so much fact-heavy driven on, say, the debate issues, because Kara-Tur and Oriental Adventures is quite unique. It's the first take on the Asian culture from TSR. Now, there's some controversy around this, but honestly, I'm mostly going to ignore that. We're going to talk about everything Oriental Adventures to the birth of Kara-Tur, into the hordes, right? And then we're going to lead up to the final where I'm going to cover the honor system in full and then we're going to see the changes from AD&D 1 to 2nd edition, which there was some. Okay, let's just dive into Kara-Tur today. I hope people end up enjoying this one. Could have been at work on this one. Oriental Adventures TSR 1985. What it is, Oriental Adventures is first edition AD&D hardcover. Is a first edition AD&D hardcover that introduced Asian-inspired classes, monsters, cultures, and social systems to TSR D&D, all Asian-inspired. It was not just another monster, appendix. It was a rule expansion plus a cultural framework that could function as a standalone campaign model or as a plugin to existing AD&D worlds. It later became the foundation for Kara-Tur. Or Kara-Tur. People always pronounce some of this stuff in multiple ways. It's not like they sent rules out. Who made it? Primary designer, David Zeb Cook. Contributors included TSR designers and artists working during the mid-80s AD&D first edition era. Zeb Cook's fingerprints are clear. Structured subsystems, cultural mechanics, mechanical identity tied to theme. This is the same designer who later shaped second edition's structure. So Zeb worked on both editions. Why it was made. 1. Market timing. Mid-80s trend wave. By 1985, martial arts films were wildly popular in North America. Ninja and samurai fascination was mainstream. Western fantasy gaming was heavily Eurocentric. TSR saw both a design and commercial opening. Makes sense. This stuff was really popular at the time. Expand AD&D beyond Europe. Until this point, AD&D was overwhelmingly token filtered. Western medieval, pseudo-Norman, Anglo-Saxon fantasy. Oriental Adventures attempted to prove AD&D could mechanically model a different civilization mindset. Not just new monsters, but new social assumptions. Number 3, mechanical experiment. This book introduced mechanics that directly tied culture to rule. Honor as a tracked system. Social hierarchy restrictions. Clan obligations. Martial arts subsystems. Weapon proficiencies with cultural depth. New spell list and magical styles. It wasn't reskinning fighters into a samurai. It built structural differences on purpose. Variation away. What it added to AD&D? New classes, samurai, Shukenja, Sohai, Ninja, and Wujen. I'm going to probably get cursed out on a few of those, but I'm not good at pronouncing. This is a long time ago I played with this thing, and I never looked up the pronunciations for some of the Asian names, and sorry, I apologize. These weren't cosmetic variants. They had unique spell access, social obligations, mechanical identity, honor system. Honor was quantified. It affected social interactions, reputation, advancement opportunities, NPC reactions. It's a major departure from Core 1E, where alignment carried moral weight but not structural social capital. Martial arts rules. Let's get to this. The book includes detailed martial arts styles, maneuver trees, style specialization. For 1985 AD&D, this was unusually granular. Monsters and mythology, Oni, spare creatures, mythic beasts drawn from multiple Asian traditions, Uh, it broadened the Monster Manual worldview. Was it a setting? Initially, no. It provided a framework world, early Kara-Tur seeds, but it wasn't fully integrated into Forgotten Realms until later products. It functioned like a cultural campaign toolkit, tone and design based on reality, simulating reality. A common thing you notice, no matter how much fantasy there are in these games, simulation, either of the fantasy or just something that's more down to earth from the real world, it's a lot of simulating real, right? The mindset is simulating real. It reflects 1980s Western interpretation of Asian history and myth. That means pan-Asian blending, romanticized samurai code, simplified cultural compression, myth over anthropology. But it was not written as a parody, it was serious in tone. TSR treated it like a legitimate fantasy expansion. How it was received? Mixed. Mixed, but influential, definitely. Now you get Kara-Tur out of this. Strengths: bold expansion of fantasy scope. Again, we're moving into the Asian world. Mechanical ambition. All new the social mechanics, things they weren't trying before. Clear identity, right? Trying to clarify everything. This is at a time when people like Zeb Cook wanted to give you a sort of the best answer they can, right? The most clear stated stuff, because that was the inspiration from BX, from Basic. Get more clear on the product. And it was all about you knowing what something was, or them communicating clearly what something was. Weaknesses: cultural compression, complexity overhead, harder player buy-in. It never replaced core AD&D playstyle, so it never got so good that it overtook, but it expanded what AD&D could do. Of course, people take ideas from things. Why it matters historically. Oriental Adventures represents TSR's first major non-Western fantasy expansion. That's important. This is the evolution of this. Cultural mechanics and integrated into rule structure. So it's not just, before it's the DM handles the world reaction and how people take the end, right? You don't got to worry about too many dice rolls type of stuff going on. This is different. This is completely different, right? It is, well, integrated. It's rule-based. A bridge between 1E rigidly and second ed modular identity, because this is Zeb Cook working on it, so his mindset is always evolving even as he's working on this, and you're going to see this go towards that type of thing. The seed that becomes Kara-Tur, that's what this is. Without it, Kara-Tur doesn't exist. Absolutely. Absolutely. This has to exist for Kara-Tur to exist. Without it, AD&D stays culturally narrow. It means it never expands out to any other culture in any way. It doesn't try. I think that's what would have happened with something like this shutting down, right? It'd be no good. So I do think other cultures are interesting. Great to look back on, take in. How Oriental Adventures became the foundation of Kara-Tur. Step 1. The rule came first, 1985. When Oriental Adventures were released, it wasn't fully mapped, politically detailed. It wasn't a fully mapped, politically detailed campaign setting. It was a cultural rule framework, a class expansion, a mechanical experiment, honor, martial arts, social hierarchy. Designer Dave Zeb Cook built systems first: samurai, ninja, wujen. Clan obligations, honor tracking, new spells, and monsters. The book included a loose geographic framework, but not a fully developed continent with trade routes, empires, or meta plot. At this stage, it was Asian flavored AD&D, right? It was just AD&D. with the changes to make this an Asian version of it. And they're trying to hit that market, so it makes sense at the time. Step 2, Forgotten Realms explodes 1987. When Forgotten Realms campaign set launched, TSR suddenly had a global map, a best-selling campaign world, demand for expansion material. Now TSR had a question. Where does Oriental Adventures fit? Instead of leaving it isolated, TSR made a strategic move. They attached it to Toro. Forgotten Realms. Step 3. Kara-Tur is formalized 1988. The real transformation happens with Kara-Tur, the Eastern Realms. This product places Kara-Tur on the eastern side of Torel, expands Shulung, Kazakura, Wa, and others, connects trade routes to Faroon, provides full political structures, grounds classes to define nations. This is when the framework becomes a setting. What changed and transition? We're going to get to that in a second, but you see how Kara-Tur takes the ideas of the Oriental Adventures and then starts going, well, if we're looking at the Asian world and we have all these, how do we place them? Where do the warriors come from? So they start making an actual area that is going to act like Asian cultures and nations around, various ones, of course. Think of it, again, it's like a parody, but not when you laugh. It's when they take serious. It's borrowing stereotypes in that, but it's not to make fun of the thing. It's to make something special, something good. There's no laughing at all with this. So what changed in the transition? Before Oriental Adventures, cultural mechanics first, like geography, broad analog inspiration, toolkit mentality. After Eastern Realms, defined empires, maps and borders, political relationships, economic systems, military structures, integration into realms canon. So there's a lot taken from this. And you got to remember, Zev Cook is working on this and then going to second edition. So they're saying some of this stuff you're going to see later, here's where you're seeing it come to life a little bit, be tested. The old way of doing this, like TSR did often with a lot of their ideas. It's always like, here's one version, then there's some middle stuff, but that middle stuff isn't even worried about updating what you already have. It's trying to learn what it needs to know for the next thing. And that's the way a company stays alive. So it always makes sense that that's how you somewhat evolve your products, right? Kara-Tur becomes more than where samurai live. It becomes geopolitical. It becomes a geopolitical region. Mechanically, nothing was rewritten. This is key. Kara-Tur didn't replace the mechanics, it contextualized them. Honor became embedded in the real societies. Samurai weren't generic, they belonged to Kozakura or Wa. Wu-Gen traditions tied into regional cosmology, bureaucracy shaped Shulung's campaign tone. Sometimes my jaw doesn't work with me. The rules stayed, the world caught up. So the rules don't really change in a way in AD&D. It's saying it's advancing the rules without changing them. So advancing means how can the rules be applied to this world where there's some structure and failure, like society is so structured that it is more like a fight than it is something casual in many ways, right? There's a very structured way, and people are judging you in this way. It's almost on purpose. So in a way, a mechanic is almost, you feel like it's needed to explain some of the stuff. Like it can't just be casually put out there. It's like, well, did you do the wrong thing in front of people? Yeah, well, this is not a timeline where people are so forgiving or open-minded, right? Why TSR did it? 3 reasons. Product consolidation. Instead of standalone Asian line, attach it to their biggest seller. Like, think about it. You already have most people with this world. And it's why not? Why not just pretend, not pretend, but just make it into an expansion of that. So there's more attraction to buy it to go with something that popular already out there, right? World expansion. Make the realms feel planetary. Sales logic. Realms fans would buy Western expansion. They believe people that got Forgotten Realms would like this new expansion of the world. It was a business smart integration. It had an impact. Kara-Tur proved something important. TSR didn't treat Oriental Ventures as a side experiment. They canonized it. They took that thing and made it real. They didn't give up on it. They went, okay, we got something good here. Bang, right? Made a world for it. I mean, that just got to tell you this, the success, or at least in the minds of TSR people, they really got behind this thing. Because why would you continue something that you see failure in, right? You wouldn't see that. So Oriental sold well, it did well. Well, we have a reason, right, to keep pushing this thing somewhere unique. And they came at it differently than some of the other adventurers and that. So it's almost like they were trying to build a game in itself, and that turns into building some type of world for it, but then attach that world to Forgotten Realms. They said, this belongs in the same world as Waterdeep. That matters. Oriental Ventures built the rule skeleton. Kara-Tur added flesh, blood, and political identity. The Eastern Realms box set is where the experiment becomes canon. TSR didn't abandon, they anchored it to their flagship world. So Oriental Adventures was a well-loved product by the actual company. There wasn't as much controversy back at the time when it came out. And this was a product they wanted to continue. And you get Kara-Tur. We're going to go right into Kara-Tur now. Or Kara-Tur. Who created it? Kara-Tur begins with David Zeb Cook. He designed Oriental Adventures, which introduced new classes: Samurai, Ninja, Shugaja, or Shukinja. I'm not good at pronouncing that one. Martial arts systems, honor mechanics, Asian-inspired monsters and spells. Cultural campaign assumptions differ from pseudo-medieval Europe. At first, Kara-Tur was not part of the Forgotten Realms. It was a generic setting framework to support the rules that were made for the Oriental Adventures. Later, Ed Greenwood and TSR editorial staff folded Kara-Tur into a Forgotten Realms campaign set as the far eastern continent of Tyrell, as I said earlier. The major expansion came in the Horde. It's going to be important. Kara-Tur, the Eastern Realms, the box set formalized Kara-Tur as a full TSR campaign setting. So even though it's attached, it becomes its own thing anyway, which is what they really want, but they needed it to be successful. Tie it to this system, we make more money. And that's good. That continues the whole process. Why was it created? 3 major reasons. Mid-1980s, martial arts and Asian fantasy boom. The 1980s had Kung Fu films' popularity in the West, ninja fascination, samurai romanticism, Japanese RPG and anime growth. TSR saw a design and market opportunity. Zeb Cook's goal wasn't purity. He wanted a rule framework for honor-driven societies. Okay, that's very important. A shift away from the Western feudal assumptions. A different moral and social structure than alignment alone. Now, folks, I started a bit early tonight, and sometimes that's to avoid some, I usually start later to avoid some noise, but we're starting a little bit early, so on occasions, be a bit forgiving. I try to smother up the noise as much as I possibly can so it doesn't annoy you. Expand AD&D's cultural scope by 1985. AD&D was mostly European. Token-filtered fantasy. Kara-Tur was TSR's attempt to show AD&D could handle imperial politics, clan loyalty, spiritual hierarchies, ancestral reverence, court politics, different cosmologies, assumptions, and broaden what fantasy meant inside TSR D&D. So it's just playing on the Asian world. It's just showing you that there's a whole other world, and this rule set with some twist can be planted onto anything. That's a way of showing expansion, and you do see some of that where they go into different cultures, and they're always trying to show that this rule set isn't just overall European, though built off that theme, right? Definitely. 3, strengthen the Forgotten Realms. Once the realms exploded into popularity after 1987, TSR needed geographic expansion. They did need expansion. It was people wanted it. More product lines, fresh cultural flavors. Attaching Kara-Tur to the eastern edge of Faerun gave TSR a whole new product stream. Trade routes, political tension zones, a reason for east-west campaigns. It made the realms feel like a globe, not a continent. What was Kara-Tur? What was that, right? At its core, Kara-Tur was TSR's pan-Asian fantasy supercontinent. Super, get it? This is where it's a mix of things. This included analogies of Imperial China, Shulong. So this is the mix of the cultures. I say it takes from everything. Imperial China, Shulong, feudal Japan, Kazakura, Korea-inspired realms, Mongol-styled steppe cultures, the Tugan Horde. It was not a historical Asia. It was mythologized, AD&D-ized Asia. So it was going, we want to be true to Asia, but we still have to be able to simulate it. So in a way, it's taking the popularity, the things seen through the movies, the ideas, the stereotypes, and then adjusting it to the rules, less in a way adjusting some rules to it. So where it made rules, that was an adjustment to the culture to make it work, right? But where it came to the core rules, it was like, no, this has to backtrack to that so we can justify it. Like it's if it changes too much of this, it changes AD&D. And the idea is to show that you can blend AD&D to the culture, right? Okay. Structurally different from the realms, Kara-Tur emphasized social order over individual heroism. Honor system tied to the mechanics, clan structure and family hierarchy. Hey, Stephen Kennedy, what's up, my friend? Politics, spiritual cosmology, distinct from Faerun's gods. So in this part of Forgotten Realms, yeah, new gods, new belief system, a dismissing of other gods. So again, it was meant in a way to be its own realm. This is why it is in a way so separate, but then there is minor blending for campaign reasons to mix and why some of these ideas might bleed over into what you already have with Forgotten Realms where it wasn't there, right? So there's a reason to blend some of it, but it was made to be its own thing. The book even had different assumptions about alignment interpretation, magic styles, class restrictions, cultural obligations. This wasn't just samurai in the realms. It was mechanically flavored culture. Design tone. TSR-era reality. It reflected the 1980s Western interpretation of Asian myth and history. That means romanticized samurai codes, simplified cultural blending, pan-Asian fusion and tone, not comedic. Zeb Cook was trying to respect source material within the limits of TSR's research resources at the time. Why it never became as big as the core realms. Reality. Most TSR players wanted, this is brutal, Western fantasy. So as much as the Oriental adventures actually did pretty well, Kara-Tur didn't. Most people want to play the European stuff. They just didn't want to play with the Asian stuff. This is a brutal truth when you look at the market back at the time. The rule changes added friction. Cultural role play required more buy-in. It was geographically distinct from Faroon. It lacked Drizzt level breakout, like a Drizzt type of character. It sold respectably. It never dominated. So it made a little bit of money, just not a lot of money. Oh, it was popular. I mean, there is, I mean, some of the money it made, just sort of evening out, is the reason it made it because of the popularity of exactly what you're saying there, Steve. Steve N. Sorry about that, my friend. But it was that. That really was popular stuff. Straight out, really popular. Yeah. But yeah, Western European, that's really what, baby. Just is what it is. What it represented in TSR's history. Kara-Tur was TSR's first major cultural expansion experiment, a test of mechanical cultural integration, a bridge between 1E and later second ed setting diversity, a precursor to Birthright and Dark Sun in terms of thematic distinctiveness. It proved AD&D could mechanically support different civilization assumptions. So basically, it could handle the overall change. Like it could create the mechanics, it could adjust without the core game breaking. So what they were doing was going, we don't change the core. We make the core more important than even the theme. So the core rules will not be adjusted for the theme. We can make exceptional extra rules for the theme, but that's the end. And as long as it can do that, that's what they meant. But they felt you could attach it to any culture just by being willing to add a few rules that might be unique to the culture compared to the loose culture of Europe at the time, right? Which allows you to be a bit more freehand with how you deal with that, right? And it's more understood by most people playing it, right? It's a common culture. So other cultures aren't as common, especially in the minds of the people gaming at the time, which were the majority of Western and Europe. A lot of European places, UK, well, Britain, all these places were gaming. We're gaming for real. Okay. So that was the opening for Kara-Tur. Okay. Shulong, Kazakura, and Wa, TSR-era Kara-Tur breakdown. This is important. I told you what it brought, what it meant, what it was in that way, but here we're going to focus. Shulong, Imperial China. So this is it's a mix of the different cultures making up an area, but there is literally, it's just based on real world stuff, Japan, China, stuff like this, right? So there are certain places that are meant to just be a reflection of that period. And it's where you get some Asian monsters, where you see Asian dragons in D&D and go, how'd they get there? This is the type of stuff right here, right? Imperial China, Source Focus, Oriental Adventures 1985, and Kara-Tur, the Eastern Realms 1988. What it is. Shulong is the largest, most powerful empire in Kara-Tur. It is ancient. It's stable. It's a bureaucracy. It has a system. It operates on imperial mandate, civil service, and layered social hierarchy. So it's a real stable place. Like this is a real fucking high branching part of society. It isn't fantasy China. Well, I hear that. It's a good place to start, dude. I like the games you play now. You have good taste. Okay. It isn't fantasy China. It's, in a historical sense, it's AD&D's mythic imperial model filtered through Chinese inspiration. So it's not China, it's inspired by China. So it's Asian, so it will reflect China in many ways because of the inspiration. So they're saying that in a way, China is somewhat represented in the theme, somewhat because you can see the inspiration, you can hear, you can see, you can feel, you can read it, you can get the inspiration just by having the experience with it. So you're going to relate it to China, Imperial China. Government and structure. Ruled by a divine emperor, mandate style authority, massive bureaucracy, scholar official class is culturally powerful. So the more educated you are, the more sway over people you have. Law and order emphasized over wandering heroics. Oh, it's a taste of Asia. There's Japan, China, Korea. All these influences come into this, and it's the Oriental adventures. Is if that doesn't exist, you don't get the Kara-Tur Eastern realms added to the Forgotten Realms, right? That's where that starts, Stephen. And this is it. What it does is they just decided to sort of try to make their own little Asian world of sort of like a China, Japan, Korea type place to be able to play with their myth. It's look, they understand they're not going to make 50 different Asian worlds. So if you want to get a lot of this stuff in, you're sort of going to make a world where you can sort of go, can we touch this, and this, and get some of the cool stuff? Oh, we can? Well, if we're not going to make 2 of these, let's try to get as much as we can in 1. And that's what Kara-Tur, the inspirational continuation, seemed like to me. Oriental adventures so well. This is why this got the, hey, we think we can make some money with this. And then when they thought about it after the success of Forgotten Realms, they were like, oh, here's a new idea. Maybe we can make a lot of money if we can get a lot of these Forgotten Realms people to want to purchase it, given that blew up. That's so many new people. Let's expand for them. And they're asking for an expansion. And this definitely is an expansion, right? Law and order emphasized over wandering heroics. So being civilized is serious deal here. And the excuse to break being civilized, even to save people, is questioned. So it's not just the authority will question you. Other people around you will be like, why did you do that? Maybe it was better that he died. And people believe it. But you jumped in to save him. But you're criticized. You broke order. You shouldn't have done that. So it's a civilized but somewhat controlled through order rules type of civilization, which is exactly Imperial China. Unlike Faroon, this is not a frontier fantasy. It's a civilization first. Religion and cosmology, ancestor reverence, spirit world integration, celestial bureaucracy mirrors earthly one, less adventure cleric focus, more ritual and cosmic order. Tone at the table. Tone at the table. Lung campaigns lean towards court politics, investigation, intrigue, clan and family obligations, imperial service missions. Its Forgotten Realms is swords and ruins. Sholong is scrolls and response. If Forgotten Realms is swords and ruins, Sholong, this part of the world, is scrolls and responsibility. So there's a lot more game up here. Like this, what you're doing in your social stature is almost more important to your character than getting out for the treasure. Because the treasure, here's what's weird. This is why they sell it this way. If you understand it, makes more sense. Social capital is treasure. Like it's worth something. And there's a real payoff for having it. So you actually feel it. Like you get to actually take good reputation and meet with people others can't. Right away. Because you built that up. So there's real, like it feels like you're getting a payoff for acting right, for doing the right thing, for building up connections, social capital. It just tries to make that part of the game something special. And these ideas will expand later, but you can see that as being very interesting to turn, because of the new civilization, the way they treat things, this different culture, this different place, different people, that you really do get a payoff for the social reputation you have in a way that it's almost structured. It's structured into the rules that you're supposed to get a good reaction this way, right? So the game, it just takes it very serious. It makes social capital treasure. So in the mindset, it actually works because you, again, this is going to lead to benefits for you as you gain it in the game. So you'll feel it. And that's on purpose, of course. Kara-Tur, feudal Japan. Source focus, Oriental adventures in the Eastern realms. What it is. Kara-Tur is a feudal island nation dominated by daimyos, samurai codes, and clan rivalries. This is where most tables place their samurai and ninja campaigns. Government and structure, emperor exists, but real power lies with regional lords. Clan loyalty overrides personal ambition. You'll give your life for somebody else's goal if you believe in that goal. So you believe in them. Civil war and factional tensions are common. So there's fractures in groups. New leader steps up, people side with him, time to fight. More volatile than Shulong. So Shulong is more ordered and controlled. Feudal Japan is more freedom and earn it. You know what I mean? It's a lot more freedom. Just that's the reality difference for you. More volatile than Shulong. Mechanics emphasize. So it emphasizes the whole thing. Kara-Tur showcases these mechanics. This is the emphasis that Kara-Tur shows off. Honor rules, samurai class, ninja intrigue, martial arts systems, weapon specialization culturally embedded, like katanas. Honor isn't flavor text. Oh, hey, it's a real part of the game. It affects reputation and social survival. That's why I tell you, it's treasure. Social capital is treasure in this one. Tone at the table, dual culture, espionage, betrayal, clan warfare, personal sacrifice stories. Kara-Tur feels more adventurable than Shulong because instability breeds plot. Like the on the edge stuff breeds the drama that you need to make the things happen. Right? The orderly over in the China-inspired place is more settled down and controlled. Like you have to look under something to find a problem. And even then, you'll be told it's not a problem or not to talk about the problem. Wa, it's another place. Mythic Japan. So this is another Japanese type place, but a different type of Japan. More insular, more stylized. Primarily Eastern realms. So this is one that's less inspired by the Oriental adventure book. So this is one where they're working on Kara-Tur, and this becomes something they start developing on its own. What it is, Wa is another island culture similar to Kara-Tur, but more closed, rigid, and conservative. If Kara-Tur is turbulent feudal Japan, Wa is isolationist, tightly controlled Japan. So a different version, more control. Structure means less freedom. Structure, highly stratified society, strong anti-foreigner sentiment. That doesn't change ever. That's modern Japan too. To be real, if you know some of those people, and I do, I've gamed with some of them. Cultural purity emphasized. Powerful ninja and secretive clans. Tone at the table. Wa campaigns often lean into covert operations, assassination plots, secret loyalties, clan conspiracies, more shadow play than Kara-Tur's open conflict. Right? So where it's control, it goes back to you got to look under something to find problems. It's more sneaky. It's not just out there. That's why they say it's in the AD&D sense, the feudal Japan area is Kara-Tur is more a place for normal, something relatable to the adventuring you've done before trying this theme. Big picture, TSR intent. TSR wasn't just reskinning Europe, they were testing cultural mechanics. Honor as system, not suggestion. European, non-European cosmology, so trying gods from foreign, cultures, right? Social obligation over individualism. So it's usually about the individual in old school D&D, the freedom, you, boom. This is more about you. It's more beneficial for you to bend, right? Less individual can be paid off well in this world, in almost every sense. More loyalty, more you give up your own freedom in the process, the more you're paid off. So again, there's treasure for trade with your loyalty. And if you build up your reputation, now you can ask for more. I'll give you loyalty, but now because I'm somebody, you got to give me this. Or if you want to keep doing business with me, we got to upgrade the deal. Sholong, civilization and order. Kazakura, warrior drama. Wa, controlled shadow state. Okay, here's where we get into a different section. This came out after the Tugon Horde. What was the Horde? The Horde was TSR's step expansion of Kara-Tur in the Eastern Realms. It detailed the Tugen nomadic empire, steep culture, warfare, and mobility. The rise of conquering Khan. A sweeping invasion story. It wasn't just a setting book. It pushed a meta plot event. Who created it? Primary design credit goes to David Cook, Zeb Cook, with TSR Realm staff contributing. This was a late 1E, early Realms expansion period. TSR was scaling the Forgotten Realms into a global stage. Who are the Targon? The Tugon. The Tugon are TSR's mythic, steep conquerors. Cultural. Mongol Empire. That's what inspires them. These are the Mongols. Fantasy layer. AD&D cosmology and the realm's geography. So this is where a bit more of that starts playing in. The Mongols are really weird. They are nomadic horse archers, clan-based. They are focused on war, led by Supreme Kahan. Not Khan, Kahan. This isn't just barbarians. They are tactically sophisticated, politically organized. You might notice I'm performing all the time. I don't know, sometimes there's to me when I do these things, I can be casual during the interviews, but even then I feel like I'm still somewhat in performance mode, focused on what I'm doing, saying. I know some guys that do these streams that they get on, I'm like, they'll sit there for like 2 minutes saying nothing. And I'm like, that because of the way I am, I can't that much time going by without saying anything. I think that would kill my stream. I don't know. Sometimes I think the people that watch me have a higher expectation because see, some guys, they have like whatever amount of viewers just watching them do nothing. I'm like, that's not even painting. He's not even trying to talk right away. I'm like, dead air to me is just like scary. Light, fast cavalry, swift and deadly. Of course, the Mongols. Okay. Yaman Kahan. The driving force of the box set is Yaman Kahan. He is charismatic, military brilliant, unifier of tribes. He's Genghis Khan. Expansionist conqueror. TSR is clear parallel to Genghis Khan, but filtered through the realm's fantasy logic. He launches a massive Western invasion that reshapes Eastern Faran and Kara-Tur geopolitics. What made this box set different? Unlike Xiaolong, Empire of the Kazakura feudal drama, the Horde emphasized 1. Mobility over civilization. No fixed cities, no court intrigue, war camps, supply chains, mounted tactics. Campaign tone becomes fast-moving warfare, frontier tensions, survival under invasion. Reflects the real world, doesn't it? Number 2, military realism by TSR standards. The Tugon are portrayed as disciplined cavalry archers, strategic planners, psychological warfare users, logistically capable. This wasn't a cartoon villainy. It was structured conquest. So this is serious. Like, it's not, there's no joke in what they're trying to build for you. This is everything in this setting all the way is just fucking, it's passion driven, right? And this project really is passion driven. And why not? It was making some money. You finally get a product you can put some passion into that you want to make, and you're actually getting the support. Everything goes in your favor. That's sort of what this is. So you get some really great ideas pouring out in the process of like, wow, we're making money on the thing we like to do type of thing, right? Like, oh, we're into this new. And think about it. These guys have been doing the same thing for years. This is a new thing with the thing. You get this. We're nerds. The realm-spanning event. The Tugon invasion crossed into Western Faerun. That mattered. It made Kara-Tur relevant to the core realms. For once, the East wasn't isolated. It influenced the main stage. Campaign styles enabled, with the Horde, you could run PCs defending against the invasion, PCs serving Kahan, mercenaries switching sides, diplomats trying to stop war, step native campaigns from inside the Horde. So it's like you can, run other things from weirdly related to it. It opened a dynamic war narrative rarely seen in early TSR settings. So it gave some real focus to war. Should be appreciated by some people. And why, that's the idea is, hey, before you question this, here we got some cool ideas that you like. So take a look, right? Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, please. And that's sort of the early ideas with the Oriental adventures, right? How it fit into TSR's design era. Late 80s, TSR was experimenting with large-scale metaplot, cultural diversity in fantasy, expanding the realms beyond medieval Europe, structured geopolitical conflict. The Horde sits between Kara-Tur's cultural experiment. Second Ed's more aggressive setting change, Dark Sun, Birthright. It's a bridge product. Why it didn't become dominant, blunt truth. The nomad fantasy that it was pitching was niche. Most players preferred dungeons or court drama. The box set required large-scale war buy-in. Remember, its miniatures aren't being used commonly. Most people coming into the hobby are not war gamers. Just a very small portion of war gamers crossed over, and they could not have made AD&D 1's customer base. You have people coming in that just, they're not into the war gaming. They're actually into the fantasy role play part. They like playing their character, and that's most people. It was geographically distant from many campaigns. It was respected. It wasn't mainstream, but respected. The Tugon weren't orcs on horses. They were TSR's attempt at a nomadic imperial power. Yeoman Kahan is one of the TSR's clearest historical people, like characters. The Horde is Kara-Tur's most dynamic geopolitical product. Briefly made the East matter to the entire realm. So that story makes the East sort of like an overwhelming story going on in the realms at the time. That's the idea that this all happens. Okay. We're going to move on to the honor system. Very important. The honor system, Oriental Adventures, TSR, AD&D 1E. what it was. Honor in Oriental Adventures was tracked. It's based on stats, everything, not flavor, not alignment, not DM vibes. It was recorded on your character sheet. It went up and down, and it had consequences. Why it existed. Zeb Cook wasn't just adding samurai swords. He was trying to model clan obligation, social hierarchy, reputation-based societies, public shame versus glory, duty over individualism, honor made cultural mechanical, how it worked, core concept. Characters had an honor score determined by class, social status, family background, actions taken in play. Honor changed based on obeying superiors. Remember that's what I said, you give up your freedom. Obeying superiors, fulfilling oaths, acting courageously, but within order. And that's showing loyalty. And it dropped for disobedience, public shame, even if you're saving someone. But in some cases, it would be considered cowardice, right? It's a weird society. Some people deserve to die. Some people you should save. It can be a weird measure stick of who is the person you're allowed to save under breaking order. So it's a weird structure. There's certain people, like the woman or child, you could jump in. That dumb guy, fuck him. Weird. But it is sort of acknowledged in this. Cowardice, dishonorable behavior, failing obligations. It wasn't just be good. It was act according to your societal role. Important. You get the freedom your role allows you, and there's an understood role that you take in the society. Mechanical consequences. Honor affected. NPC reactions. Social standing. Remember, it becomes treasure. Promotion within hierarchy. Access to superiors. Connections. Marriage prospects. Political influence. Low honor could close doors socially. Bring disgrace. Damage clan reputation. Create real campaign complications. This is not something standard when he tracked. Class interaction. Some classes were more honor-bound. Samurai had strict expectations. The Shukja, and Sohi had religious duties. Ninja operated in a moral gray space, but still had eternal codes. Different classes gained and lost honor in different ways. That's important. Honor wasn't universal. Wasn't a universal morality. It was a role-bound. How it changed play? In core AD&D, alignment governs moral philosophy. In Oriental Adventures, honor governs social survival. Like, to be damaged socially affects what you can do, so much so that it has to be something you feel and something that puts the pressure on the DM to enforce that, and you do that through rules. That's why rules are being made for this, unlike the sort of more free-wielding European Western view of these things, right? You don't just ask, is this lawful? You ask, how will this affect my standing? What makes it historically important? What makes that historically important? This is one of TSR's earliest attempts at social mechanics beyond alignment, cultural systems embedded into rules, reputation as quantifiable gameplay. Later editions would experiment with the reputation system. Oriental Adventures did it in 1985. Criticisms could feel restrictive, required heavy DM enforcement. That's true. Some players ignored it. It added bookkeeping, but when used seriously, it transformed tone. It did what it was meant to do. Honor was a tracked stat. It measured social worth, not just morality. It shaped how NPCs treated you. It enforced cultural expectations mechanically. It made Kara-Tur structurally different from Faroon. Remember, it's meant to be its own world, so that's obvious that's going to happen, right? Okay. How Second Ed treated Kara-Tur differently. The short version. In 1E, Kara-Tur was a bold mechanical experiment that got canonized. Yeah. In second ed, it became background geography inside of Forgotten Realms, not a flagship line. 1E Kara-Tur, late TSR 1E context, just to be clear, this is late 1E. Foundation products, Oriental Adventures, Kara-Tur, the Eastern Realms. 1E treatment was mechanically distinct, honor system emphasized, culture deeply embedded into class identity, what you were, where you're going to be, separate feelings from Western and AD&D assumptions. So it's a different view. It felt like AD&D through a different civilization lens. Well, this is exactly, Stephen, why I wanted to do this. This is exactly why I wanted to do this. This is one of the ones where I know a lot of people know about the other ones, but a lot of people hear about this stuff and they don't know the details. And I thought, well, this is one of the nights where it's not about me trying to get information for a debate. This is me just wanting to have fun and talk about something I think is important. I had some experience with, and I think it's something actually worth digging into. I actually do. This is something I think the OSR should be taking a look at more. The ideas are so fucking immense in this. It's groundbreaking stuff. And maybe it just needed some adjusting or editing or whatever to really get it to the place where people wanted it to be. But I mean, I think it's more, people would be more open to doing it now, trying certain things. I think there is some flaws, but I think it also can be fixed. What changed in second ed? AD&D second edition 1989 onward shifted TSR's design philosophy. Modular optional rules, setting-driven identity, cleaner presentation, reduced subsystem sprawl. Kara-Tur did not receive a major second ed era reinvention box set. Instead, it was maintained as part of the Forgotten Realms world map, referenced in Realm products, de-emphasized as a standalone cultural experiment. Okay, 1. Mechanical tone soften. Second ed as a system removed or streamlined many dense subsystems, downplayed mechanical punishment structures, reduced complexity in initiative and weapon rules. Kara-Tur's heavy honor and social enforcement mechanic lost prominence. Honor still existed conceptually, but it was no longer pushed as a defining mechanic pillar of the edition. Second ed overall favored character kits, cultural rigidity from there, right? Number 2, settings became brand pillars. Kara-Tur didn't. So settings became brand pillars like Forgotten Realms. Kara-Tur didn't inside of it, right? In second ed, TSR pushed Dark Sun, Ravenloft, Planescape, Birthright, Spelljammer. Each got strong thematic identity and heavy product support. Kara-Tur did not. It became Eastern Realms territory, not a headline setting. So it's saying if you're Forgotten Realms, we focus on Forgotten Realms. Oh, we'll talk about you, but that's all you are now, right? You're forced in that world. That's the reality. Forgotten Realms centralized under second ed. Forgotten Realms became TSR's flagship. So they're not going to bother trying to separate this any longer, so it becomes a backer. That's why it has this take. Forgotten Realms campaign settings. Faroon dominated product lines. Kara-Tur remained on the map, but was geographically and narratively distant. There were no large Kara-Tur metaplots comparable to the Time of Troubles, the Avatar Crisis, the Horde Invasion scale event, late 1E, Bridge era. So it's when, the other editions coming out. Number 4, cultural framing shifted. By the early 1990s, TSR tone became more cautious, more sensitivity aware, more setting identity focused. Kara-Tur's 1985 Pan-Asian fusion design felt dated in comparison to the sharper identity of later second ed worlds. TSR did not aggressively relaunch it, modernize or relaunch it. 5, Oriental Adventures in second ed. A second ed branded Oriental Adventures would later exist, but that was not TSR era second ed. During TSR's actual second ed run, Kara-Tur remained a legacy integration rather than a refreshed mechanical pillar. An honest assessment. Second Ed didn't kill Kara-Tur, it simply stopped spotlighting it. TSR's creative energy shifted towards, remember I said at one point you're getting something out of it, now they're more radical, it shifted towards more radical settings like Dark Sun, Planescape, Western-centric realms developed, novel-driven realms expansion. Kara-Tur became world texture, not product engine anymore, not a driving selling force. 1E made Kara-Tur a mechanical experiment. Second Ed made it a geographic location. It remained canon but lost design momentum. TSR setting strategy evolved and Kara-Tur didn't lead the evolution. It went away. And that was way under normal time. So it's like, wow, I covered everything start to finish. There is nothing there but Oriental Adventures, and other than like just going in and teaching you the exact rules, which is not what these. I'm not here. It's like when I do even the thing on the miniatures or AD&D, or when I do my second edition one tomorrow. It's not about teaching you how to play a game. There's enough content out there teaching you how to play AD&D 1. This is me telling you the real history, what it was really like, instead of assumptions. Because it's easy to assume when you see things like, oh, did it really work this way? No. So it's like, it's just coming to facts, and even put myself in my place on my own opinions. I've been doing this. There's a lot of things I've said where I'm like, as a nerd, I'm like, I don't agree, but. And this supports, I think, other arguments that I don't agree with. But so what, Stephen? If I'm willing to say, screw everyone's feelings and just put out facts, that has to include mine for the facts to get out. Because if my feelings play to this, I'll hide stuff from you. And I don't want this to be that. I want this to be so solid that if you check it and then check the facts, you'll be like, oh shit, that's good. That guy covered everything. Yep. I covered everything. So if you don't know about the Oriental Adventures of Kara-Tur, the Tugon Horde, or how, I mean, that was such awesome stuff. I actually played a bit with it. I mean, it's undervalued. You have to have people that just have the patience to do it. I had the patience to play some politics, go into finding things. And then I even tried the feudal Japan. It did feel a little bit more get out there and do your normal stuff, right? But there was still also kinds of all other social stuff going on. I liked it personally. I personally did. I get why. I guess people don't want to do it, but it's just some tedious work. As a DM, I never mind tedious work. As long as I get used to it, I'll go fast, right? So I can react to things pretty quickly after a bit. So I did. I did that. I played in it. It was good. Eastern Realms were awesome, especially if you've done all the European stuff forever. And it's not like I don't love it. I went right back to it after some experimenting, of course, but you can love two things at the same time, right? I liked the Asian take. I did. I liked it all. Would I have used it exactly that if I was trying to design something cool? Personally, not everything. But there's definitely a bunch of stuff in there where if I was going to make an Asian setting, I mean, it's so good for gameplay that I'm like, I don't think anybody in there did that under some hate for the culture. They took popular ideas of Asian culture. That's what they did. And myth. It's all fantasy because what are they doing? They're doing fantasy. So that's why D&D and the TSR group thought they had permission to really just lean into all fantasy related to the romanticizing samurais, when in reality, man, nope, very brutal. The reality of it, gruesome. But this is about fantasy. And they do the same thing with Europe. So you could say they're doing something weird or something. I'm like, well, no, isn't this is what they do at Europe? They romanticize Europe in many ways. They take things that are just, yeah, it's a bit gruesome. Now, they lean into some more reality, but there's still some parts of Europe where it's like, it's not exactly how it was. It was a little bit more, right? But they're using fantasy. They're using what's popular, what was thought, what it came up in several books around King Arthur, stuff like this. And so they took the same approach with the Oriental Adventures. and Kara-Tur, the Eastern Realms, right into these adventures, which the Horde one was interesting because you could be playing the characters in the normal Forgotten Realms and not even doing that thing, but you could still be dealing with the Horde coming in to the west, like to the into Faerun and into where you're at Waterdeep or something, and you're like, what the hell is this? Right? You're just like a normal fighter or something, but here's the Horde, right? So that can be played on you in a way, right? That can be pulled. I thought that was interesting, and I had a DM actually do that with the Forgotten Realms, right? Do the Horde thing, like, wait, where are they from? Oh shit, okay. I honestly played it once before the Horde thing came out, and then later, boom. I hope you guys are really enjoying this. The second edition is going to be the same thing tomorrow, all fact based. I'm not trying to bust people's bubble. It's like, me and Steven here talk back and forth about the miniatures today. Reality, they weren't used that often back in the day. It was usually a white piece of paper and you draw things on it. If you understood the prices, they're pretty heavy when the gaming starts, and only so many war gamers cross over with actual miniatures. Most people just don't have them to use it. In some cases, some people start trying to use chips and even some of the different colored dice to pretend they're miniatures. But a lot of people drew on a piece of paper, just went pure theater of the mind. Most people stayed in the hit zone. Especially early combat wasn't the same size combat even as later combat, right? And they had the D20 variant in the system. And when you looked at it, you realized all language for miniatures was optional, but that meant it mandated, it defaulted to one type, the game without miniatures. And the game without miniatures is pure theater of the mind. So that becomes the default. It does say something about the miniatures on the game. Of course, you read in. Just the reason it's not that popular early on is because of the cost. And the cost gets bigger. By the 80s, it's costing shitloads of money. And this is when you could make some money off selling miniatures, but you weren't going to, this is when the painting hobby starts. So the subculture of the painting hobby starts before miniatures is really popular, really has a takeover with tabletop role-playing games. And its third edition is where the breakthrough happens, even for old school guys. Most old school guys are not using miniatures. They're just not affordable. But by the time we get to third edition and WotC leans into miniature gameplay and decides they're going to do it under the circumstance that they're going to turn miniatures into plastic and make them affordable. So they're no longer a barrier. It's not like they disagree with TSR's take. They just said, we have a way of bypassing that issue. Go plastic, make them cheap, get people using them. The thing is, the old school took advantage at the time too. So guys that were still playing AD&D 1, OD&D, second edition, a lot of guys, not everyone, so a lot of people are still playing, they're just used to theater of the mind. There's no need to jump over, and theater of the mind is faster in many ways in combat and that. So a lot of guys just don't. They're actually good at doing what they're doing, so they don't cross over. That's most people at first, and even later it's not really full half, but it becomes popular. That is where you see the old school guys using miniatures often, but it's after WotC comes into the market. It just doesn't happen during the TSR era. That's why if you went and met like 100 DMs, 2 of them, if they had the money or were war gamers, could be using miniatures or whatnot. 20 of them would use chips or pieces of paper, and the rest would do pure theater of the mind. And that was pretty consistent because the majority of people that entered the hobby, and this at first, I don't think Gary understood this, but the guys who made basic, they really got this. And they were smart. From Frank to Holmes, all understood, and they must have just met a bunch of the people that came in with OD&D that were not war gamers. Very wise. I understood new people were coming to this, and it just kept stepping to the default of it costs too much money for the miniatures. We can't expect the players to need to buy these things. It's just too much money. That's it. Even on the products later, it says optional, 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 optional. All the language in the book when you're reading it, if the DM uses, it's all optional language for miniatures, right? Again, that means there's only one mandated default playstyle without miniatures, and that's pure theater of the mind, right? So that was the majority at the time, but it's now a lot more popular. And there's nothing wrong with loving miniatures, but miniatures wasn't the old school gaming style that people say it was. That's just not true. It might become more of a style the old school guys picked up later when WotC did that big eureka moment. But it was not a regular play style for the old school during the actual old school era before WotC. That's a reality. The majority of people did pure theater of the mind. And I was there, that's all I seen mostly. So when people tell me otherwise, I don't know. The company seems to lean in my direction. The default is pure theater of the mind. You check the history, even TSR acknowledges people are only using chips and things that are more affordable, like a blank piece of paper with a pencil or pen, right? Going, you're here, the enemy's here. So it's right away understood. Like, and the books are costly. You got to understand, D&D was not cheap. These were costly books, and a lot of young people were the ones purchasing. The parents might get like one or two of the books. You were not going to get like $1,000 worth of miniatures, so them and their 5 friends could sit down and play with them, right? Wasn't going to happen. Not saying you couldn't find people that use miniatures, but just say in the hobby during the old school era, it wasn't regular. It wasn't the majority. It was a very tiny minority. And people forget just how few people from the wargaming crossed over because they hated D&D. Most of the wargamer people thought this was stupid. It's like they're scary with this fucking fairy game. I talked to wargamers. This was their actual attitude. Like a lot of guys. And they liked having the attitude. It was cockiness. Oh, you're playing your little elf wussy game, eh? Yeah, sure, buddy. Yeah. It's a war game. Yeah, you can go fuck yourself. Don't call your fairy game a war game. Fuck off. And that's the attitude. I mean, you would hear guys like just curse guys out. Don't you dare call that a war game. Your little fairy pussy game ain't no war game. I heard that said so much stuff similar in that vein, said by wargamers all the time. They hated D&D. There wasn't many that crossed over. That meant the hobby was made up of people that were into the role play. And guess what? That was the majority of gameplay. Pure theater of the mind, role play. So Gary actually sort of won with this whole, it's a fantasy role-playing game. And people should respect the effort he put into making that what it was. That's what he kept saying it was. It's a fantasy role-playing game. And he realized the customer base was not wargamers. Right? That's when he realized, oh, wow. And Frank Metzer, Holmes, they all, I know they knew this. They planned for it. Their material became teaching new people. This became the emphasis of D&D, especially in 2nd edition, but you could still feel it in AD&D 1, right? Dave, a lot of people make games. Some people give Dave too much credit. I don't mind Dave, but I didn't like all his ideas either. I thought he had it's like neat ideas, but okay, they could be evolved. But here's why I think sometimes people give Dave too much credit. All of us have genius games. A lot of us have genius games, genius game ideas. I guarantee, I believe this. There's a lot of genius ideas on the floor that will never be seen. Ever. I say 99% of TTRPG ideas will never hit the market for you to purchase. I really believe that, and here's why. It's not just that the market is soft. It's so hard to push for you yourself to actually finish. Like, Gary is unique because he's not just a finisher. He is in the vein. He wore so many hats that he's in the vein of like an Elon Musk type guy in the hobby. That's why he makes the hobby. I look at Gary and go, Dave, neat ideas, but Gary's the heart. Gary is Dungeons and Dragons. And without him, most of this is shit. It doesn't exist. He wore more hats than any individual ever wore after. He did so many things, fail, whatever. He did. He went and fell on his face. But how else do you try? When it's new, you got to be willing to be embarrassed if it doesn't work out. And Gary was. And thankfully he was. Because some of the things he tried and failed became a thing later because he tried initially. Right? He was required. He's required for the entire hobby. People give Dave too much credit. It doesn't mean he doesn't deserve some. but many guys were Dave. Almost nobody was Gary. And to pretend that Dave was on Gary's level is to not understand who Gary was and how important he is to this thing. A lot of Daves out there that flop. Well, it starts with an idea, but it never will be seen the day of light with 99% of people. And how many hats do you got to wear to turn your little gaming idea into an entire hobby that expands the world? The achievement is not Dave's, because too much is altered through time. Most of the stuff Dave did, we don't even do that now. Where even the majority of old school guys swept away from that. Second edition is a great example of going away from Dave. And that's just the honest truth, right? If you know Blackmore, and I really do really well, and I understand Dave's, I did the Dave gameplay, I appreciate it. Still, we threw 99% of it under the bus after a bit. So it's like, dude, thanks for the start. See you later. We appreciate it. You were here for a second. But it's your ideas were already in books. Other people had them. And Dave even admits this. There wasn't just him with these ideas. It was other people too that had these ideas. So there was more than one Dave. There wasn't more than one Gary. So when you see the value of somebody, you understand. Dave, here, value-wise to the hobby, given there's other guys doing similar stuff. Gary, nobody does what he does. Without Gary, Dave means nothing. All of this means nothing. In a way, if it's just Dave, we never see the game. If Gary doesn't exist, we never see the game. And it's not like 50-50. Getting the game out and the way he globalized it and changed it and did what he did. Like, just don't just think the starting point. And remember, a lot of the ideas he had, Gary was doing similar stuff. So they were doing very similar. And Dave actually acknowledged that later, too, in interviews. It wasn't just him. They just had, he wanted the singular character in this way. Gary wanted singular characters another way because there was already material already written about these ideas. It's not even that. Dave's style inspired Metzer, Holmes, and some other guys. And Gary left them to do a lot of work on Beckme. We all know this, right? They had a lot of authority over those games. Why not? Gary put his heart and soul into AD&D 1 for the most part at a certain point. So he gives authority over to a lot of that stuff. They are definitely inspired by Dave. But in a way, they're moving beyond even Dave. Their ideas are going to be the ideas that break away. Like dungeon play becomes not so popular later. I know a minority in the old school likes it. Not the majority. Not the majority. That was proven. TSR accepted that. Not the majority. Most people started liking different play outside the dungeon. It just didn't stick. The individual thing, that came up and down. There's all kinds of ways of bringing new military stuff in later. So they kept pushing back against Dave's ideas, and you get more of the mix where, in a way, many of the ideas were Gary still. Like you go back to his, it starts, and I think he's doing that on purpose, but I think that's just the outcome of how this worked. They had qualms. More Dave stuff moves out, more of Gary's old ideas for more gaming, and the individual stuff moves in, right? And that's because him and Dave had qualms at a certain point, which we all know. Now, no, let me clarify tonight so we know where I stand on facts and that. I'm talking freehand, but I'm talking some facts. Some of this is, I would say, slight opinion, but I just say the facts back it up. But I'll be clear. The stuff I read off and said I'm at the end of the stream, at the end of the material, that is all going to be non-opinionated fact stuff that you can check and it will pass. This stuff will all check. I know it will. Like the evidence will all support what I'm saying. But yeah, I don't know. Dave was good, but Dave had some similar ideas as other people. I'm not trying to down on him. I just understood what it took to get the game out, and the immense shit you had to pull off for that and be on point and give up your freedom in life. It was on a level that Dave didn't have to give up his life. Like, Dave went and played a game, made up some stuff, and had fun. Gary went and worked. Big difference. Worked and made it happen when almost nobody can. Right? When almost nobody can. Like, even when Watson took over, they had a business based on cards. So it was like, it's not even somebody can just come out of nowhere and do what Gary did. Very few people. And all the other people that are secondary to D&D I'm not shitting on them. I respect their legends in the hobby, from Palladium to the Vampire game. None of them have even touched what Gary did. They haven't even touched it. And as long as they're going to be honest about that, I would expect these people would be. They'd be like, yeah, Gary started something global. If you understand what it takes to get there, and then you compare Dave figuring out a game, it's like, I can appreciate what Dave brought to it. But there was a purpose move away, and I'm a second edition guy, so I come in after they're purposely moving away from Dave on purpose. Just saying. And Zeb Cook becomes just a different guy with different ideas. He becomes the sort of second edition guy that I sort of know. Like, a lot of people like Dave, people are going to like this. I like Zeb. I'm a second edition guy. I'm going to like the guy that influenced me a lot as a DM, and the writing in the game and everything. So I like Zeb Cook personally, not Dave. I don't mind Dave, but I also didn't like his attitude in interviews. I thought he was, I don't want to insult the memory of him. Legend, I respect him for what he was. I don't want to underplay that it was an important role. I just don't want to at the same time underplay Gary's role. Right? I just don't think Dave's and Gary's role are the same. And what Gary pulled off is just so much above what Dave did in the hobby. That's it. A lot of Dave's. Almost no Gary's. Okay. I love you. Stephen, I hope you enjoyed. I hope anybody else who sees this later enjoyed. I don't know. Keep showing me that I think I've had like one person most of the night, but if people watch this later, I hope they get a lot out of it. It's fun. Tomorrow night is AD&D, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition, which I'll do just like I've done with OD&D Basic and AD&D 1. It's the whole package. Start